Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club. Today I'm gonna do the Mid-Year Freakout Tag, and I was tagged to do this by Elmo at Elmossy is how their channel name is pronounced in my head. I'm not sure if that's right, but please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that sounds cool. And I think their channel is really cool as well. I think the Mild Rumpus recommended it on his channel at some point, and I checked it out, and I'm so glad I did because it's now one of my favorite channels to watch. I love their dry sense of humor and their voice is like, you know, like really clear water in like a creek or something in the woods. Like that's how their voice feels in my brain. It's just like clear water. So yes, highly recommend their channel, and let's get into the questions. First of all, I checked on my reading goal for this year. My reading goals are a little bit more qualitative than quantitative, but I did set a goal to read 40 books this year, and I've read 21 so far. So I feel like that's very good for, you know, the end of June. I'm currently working on book number 22, and yeah, that's how I'm doing with that. And now we can get into the questions. So the first question is best book you've read so far, and I can never just pick one. So I do have a few contenders for some of these questions, including this one. One of the best books I read this year was Zeus by Madeline Miller. I read this at the start of the year. I think this was the first book I read this year, or finished at least in January. And I love it. I'm not sure I gave it 5 stars in January. I think I gave it 4 stars. But it's just one of those books that like grew on me over time, and I remember it very like fondly, and I just kind of loved being in that little world. And yeah, I don't need to say anything more. This is great. Another contender was Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes, which I also just really loved. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was also a favorite. And Sociopath by Patrick Gagné. I haven't read a lot of memoirs in my life, but that was one that I read and highly enjoyed. Highly enjoyed, can you say that? Whatever. But I think my favorite so far is a book that I read in June, and that is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This scratched a lot of itches in my brain. It wasn't at all what I expected it to be, and I was pleasantly surprised and very confused the whole time through. And I loved it. And yeah, I can't wait to talk more about this in our book club video for June. And yeah, I don't want to say too much about it here, but I loved it and I would recommend this to anyone. Question number 2 is best sequel you read so far. And I don't think I read any sequels this year, but I did start a few series, and a few of them I want to continue. So one of them is Stolen by Anne-Helene Lestadius. This is the first part of a trilogy. I also started Prison Healer, which I was like not super impressed by, but I still want to know what happens because the ending was very much a cliffhanger. And so I want to see what happens, and I want to see if the next 2 books get better, or like if I think this is better when I've read the whole series. The third one is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. There are short story collections, but there are more books with more short stories in them. And that was the best one that I have started this year. So we'll see how it goes when I read the rest of the series. Question number 3 is a new release that you haven't read but want to. I did say when I had finished The Maiden by Kate Foster that I wanted to read her upcoming book, which is called The King's Witches, I think. Yes, The King's Witches, which has been published in June of this year. And I do want to read that at some point. I also want to read Hours by Philip B. Williams, which came out this year, and I haven't read it, but I'm going to try and read it over the summer. Question number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I don't really keep track of upcoming releases that much. I watch videos about it all the time, but I don't really it doesn't really register in my brain. But I do have my first ever pre-order coming in September, and that is Rewitched by Lucy Wood, who is a YouTuber that I've been watching for years and years and years. She does lifestyle content and also talks about books, and is one of the people who made me fall in love with reading again. And so when she announced that she had gotten her debut novel published, she cried, I ordered that thing that second. It's kind of a contemporary fantasy, so it's about a woman, a witch, who doesn't really use her magic, but as she is about to turn 30, she's summoned by her coven and she has to prove her worthiness as a witch to keep her magic. I think it's going to be really good and cute and cozy and autumnal, and I'm really looking forward to reading that. Question number 5 is biggest disappointment. I have a few. I was kind of disappointed in Yellowface. I was annoyed for a lot of it, and even though I knew it was going to be annoying, I still wanted to enjoy it, and I didn't. I was also really disappointed in Sure, I'll Join Your Cult by Maria Bamford. That sounded like such a good concept, but I couldn't even finish listening to it. I think I got around 12% into that and I couldn't continue. But I think the biggest disappointment was The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I had such high hopes for this one. It sounded so good. It was going to be psychology, a university, and a murder. And yeah, it just sounded really good. And I didn't think it was very good at all. And I was very disappointed. I'm still glad I read it because it kind of gives me a benchmark or something to compare other books to. And it's, there are no highs without the lows kind of thing, So, yeah. Disappointed, but I don't regret reading it. Question number 6, biggest surprise. I don't really have a book answer for this, but I do have 3 things that have surprised me this last 6 months. The first one being how much I like audiobooks when they are made well. I've never listened to audiobooks before and I really enjoy it. The second one is how many short story collections I've bought. I have never even, the thought has never crossed my mind to buy a short story collection. And these past 6 months, I don't even know how many I've bought. And yeah, I've read Before the Coffee Gets Cold. That's kind of a short story collection, but not quite, but kind of. And I really liked that. And so I'm hoping I will like the other ones that I've bought. The third and probably biggest surprise to me is that I started a YouTube channel, which is just hilarious to me. Because I'm not the kind of person who would ever be in front of a camera. I'm happy being behind a camera and doing stuff, but I would never have pictured myself being in front of a camera and posting things on the internet with my face on it. That didn't fit at all with the image I had of myself, but I'm realizing that maybe I need to adjust that image of myself, and I don't know. It's just hilarious to me and I love it. I love the connections I've made on here, and I just want to hang out with all of you all day and do nothing else. So I'm so happy that I did start this channel, and yeah, but it still blows my mind that I did it. I've been thinking about doing it for so long, so the fact that I actually did it was a huge surprise to me. But yeah, a very good surprise. Question number 7 is favorite new author, and this can be new as in debut author or new to you. Pretty much all of these authors are new to me because I haven't read in so long, but I do have a couple that I want to mention. The first one is Kate Foster, who wrote The Maiden. Like I said, I want to read The King's Witches, which is her next book. And yeah, I just really enjoyed her writing and I want to read more of it. I also have to include Madeline Miller. I've read Circe and her short story Galatea. And I'm really looking forward to Song of Achilles in August. And yeah, I'm probably going to read whatever she writes. I also loved Natalie Haynes' Stone Blind, and I want to read more from her. I've also read The Wager and really enjoyed that, and that is by David Gran, and I know that he has more nonfiction books about other topics, so that's also an author that I want to look into what other books he's written and see kind of what stories seem interesting to me. Yeah, so those are my answer. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush. I don't really get these, or I haven't, at least, with the books that I've read this year. And I can't think of any that I've ever had, so I don't really know how to answer this question. The only one that came to mind was Karim in Bandit Queens, but that was just because he was a nice guy among a bunch of monsters, basically. So I don't know, if the bar was set very high there, but he stood out as a good person among the other ones who were not. So I guess I'm gonna say him. Question number 9 is new favorite character. And I don't really have one of those either. Not a main character that I'm so invested in and just love that character. I did think of 2 characters that stood out to me. And the first one was Violet in The Maiden, which is one of the main characters and one of the 2 women telling this story. I thought she was a fun time and a fun character, and also an interesting fate, I guess. Following her story was just as interesting as following the other woman in this story. And yeah, that's one of the characters that came to mind. The other character was the guide in Only This Beautiful Moment by Abdi Nassimian. There's this character who is a guide to another character in the book, and he sort of acts as a guide and welcomes the other character into the gay community. And yeah, I like the concept of that character and the conversations they had, and sort of how he met another person with love and understanding and just was a welcoming guide kind of person. And yeah, so that's also one of my favorites. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. And I feel like I've been crying at pretty much every book I read because I'm a crybaby. I cried reading Circe, Stone Blind, The Burnings, Bandit Queens, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and Mother of All Problems, and yeah, probably more of these books. I think I've just been in an emotional place in my life or state of mind or something, and I also tend to read kind of tragic things, emotional stories. If I had to choose one, it would probably be Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Question number 11 is a book that made you happy, and this one is a lot harder for me to think of. I think all the books make me happy, just the fact that I'm reading again makes me happy, and the fact that I'm reading books that I enjoy makes me happy. But I don't really read books that is gives you that giddy feeling. I don't think. I might say Piranesi again. This one made me smile because I loved it so much. I also loved Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. That scratched a lot of itches in my brain as well. Yeah, let's go with those 2. Question number 12 is most beautiful book you've bought this year or received. And I have definitely bought a lot of books this year so far, and I tend to buy books that I think are pretty. So the most beautiful ones, I think, are Clytemnestra by Costanza Casati, which is just It's just gold. It's just gold and Greek style illustration of a woman running there, and like the leaves around everything, and how she, is like hidden behind the letters. Yeah, I think it's really pretty. I also really like this cover, which also has a lot of gold on it. And this is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Sulfakatu, which I'm currently reading. Yeah, very pretty. I like the natural elements, and I like all of the gold and the sort of Arabic style of the design. And the third one is Hours by Philip B. Williams. I love this sort of drawing, like with the, what do you call it? Like these pens, and how like the text isn't completely filled in. It's like, looks like someone has drawn that. Yeah. I just think it's really pretty. I like the characters. I like their clothes. I like it. I like the colors. I like the style of it. I think it's very beautiful. I think the back of it looks like a textbook. So that doesn't really go with the vibe of this like drawn illustration, but it's on the back, so who cares? And the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I definitely need to read this by the end of this year, hopefully this summer. I also really want to read Homegoing by Yagyasi, James by Percival Everett. I feel like that's going to be, one of the books of this year, and so I really want to read that. And I would also like to get to the next 2 parts in Prison Healer, just to be able to say I finished a series this year, and because I want to know what happens. And I think that if I don't read it this year, I'm gonna forget what happened in the first book, and I don't want that. So I really want to read the next 2 parts in this series as well. So those were all of the questions. Thank you again to Elmo for tagging me. And if you haven't checked out their channel, please go ahead and do so. I think you'll really like it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you've had a good year so far and that the second half gets even better. And I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. And where did he, what?